Welcome to More Than a Conversation, the podcast where we meet and have discussions with some of the most interesting people and innovative leaders in their fields from all walks of life. We will be discussing everything from politics to theology to religion to philosophy to life. Every once in a while, I may just be on here talking about whatever's in the news and whatever I think will be of interest to you. This is your host, Patrick Connolly, and I hope that today will be more than a conversation for you. Welcome to More Than a Conversation. This is Patrick Connolly, and I am joined today by a very special guest. I'm joined by a friend, a mentor, someone who has grown close to the heart of both myself, my wife, our children. But I'm also joined by someone who has operated in great success in the arenas that he has operated in, and someone that I think you guys are going to love to learn from today. For many of you, you'll be familiar with him. I am joined today by the administrative bishop of the Church of God in the North Central region of the United States. I'm joined today by Bishop David Kemp. Bishop, it's good to have you with us today.
Good morning, Pastor.
We are, first of all, quick question for those that are listening, the North Central region. What in the world does that mean?
It's the outer edges of heaven, right? Just as you're entering into heaven, it is made up of North and South Dakota and Montana.
For people that have never been here, can you describe the vastness of this region?
Well, I've done it in a couple of different ways. I'd have to go back and check my math, so don't hold me to this completely, but it is basically the size of the original 13 colonies.
Wow.
And another way for people from South Carolina, you can put 2.5 South Carolinas in North Dakota, 2.5 South Carolinas in South Dakota, and 3 South Carolinas in Montana.
And you are responsible for the spiritual health of every man, woman, boy, and girl.
Well, here's the good news. When I got off the airplane in Charlotte to visit family, in a 30-minute drive of the Charlotte airport, there are more people than in all 3 of those states combined. So,
wow.
So I have a lot of territory, but thankfully the Lord is not holding me responsible for millions and millions of people.
We landed down in South Dakota, and the first thing we were hit with was just the vast beauty of the land. And we're going to have a whole conversation today, but there's a lot of history out here. You get that romantic Western feeling. I learned a little bit about Teddy Roosevelt. We were able to go over and how he experienced healing in his emotional life after, was it the death of his?
Well, his on a Valentine's Day, his mother and his wife both died in the same house. His mother died, I don't really remember how, but his wife died in childbirth in their same house on the same day on Valentine's Day.
Wow, that's incredible. And so after that, he was broken, and he came here, and he later on said that if he hadn't come to this part of the country, he never would have become president.
Right.
Was his quote. When you step out and you see this, I guess, what does it make you think? And we can talk about this as you can talk about it from the perspective of a Christian, of a man who has spent his life in theology, but help for people that are out there listening. What are you feeling? What are you thinking when you go and see the landscapes in this area? What response do you have when you first came? Because I'm still trying to get the words together for what I've experienced. You've been here for a year and a half now, 2 years.
2.5 years.
2.5 years. So you've been here 2.5 years. You've been able to see some beautiful things. What is your response to that? I know you like to write, but if we're putting it out in words, how do you respond to emotionally, spiritually, physically to what you see here?
Well, early on, I remember a quote. I think it was by William Lane Craig. This is anecdotal. I don't know for sure if he's ever documented this, but he says most atheists live in the city, and you won't find many atheists in the country. And I understand that. I think a word for it would be transcendent. When you drive out here, it's just incredible. And I'm not a visibly emotional man very much, but I have been almost brought to tears driving through this region. It's just incredible, the beauty. I can even see, I understand now, like Israel in the Bible or in all people, I understand now how they worship nature. It's like you can almost forget the Creator just being so overwhelmed with His creation. Wow. So I remember one time going the way you came. I went a little different way. There's a couple ways to go to Rapid City, so I almost did a 90-degree angle. You go down to Dickinson, which you've been to Dickinson now, and then you hang a sharp left and just go straight down. And that hour's drive, several hours drive, and I looked out, and there was a thunderstorm with lightning crashing down, the black clouds rolling. That thunderstorm was probably as big as South Carolina.
Wow.
And so you're looking over here and it's beautiful blue skies, and over here beautiful blue skies, but I'm driving into that thunderstorm, and it was just almost a sacred, reverent moment. That it was just incredible, the contrast, and you can see for miles. I'll tell you another word, Patrick, that I think we've lost. I've urban living most of my life,
sure.
And so out here, a word we've lost. The word I use is solence. People do not get solence, and early on, I had to learn. People taught me how to take care of myself physically, and people have taught me how to take care of myself spiritually. But we don't make any effort or spend any time thinking about taking care of ourselves emotionally. And really, oddly enough, that is one of the main problems with people in America today. We live so fast. Of course, spiritually, people don't even, that's not even in their radar. They don't even know there's a second floor in the house. But we put so much emphasis on the physical that we forget the emotional.
And how does emotional tie to, when you say emotional, does that tie to mental? Or is mental and emotional, are they divided? And I know neither one of us is a psychiatrist.
Yeah, it's above my pay grade. But when I say emotional, I do think about my thought life and your feelings. That it's all kind of mushy right there. But you go out, you may not have even thought about it, but you went for miles and miles and could not even see a telephone pole. You know, that you can, because Sanj and I, we've hiked in every state park in South Carolina. That was a goal of ours. And most of the state parks in North Carolina. We love to travel. Many down in Georgia and Florida, all down in the southeast. And I thought I was out in the country. But you could always hear traffic. You could always hear an airplane, see an airplane. Out here, you really do hear silence. Nothing but the wind. Nothing but nature. It's solence for the soul. It's really almost a spiritual experience in some of these places. And you haven't seen Montana yet, and I have to be careful, and I mean this sincerely. All three states are unique and special in their own way, so it's not one that I like better than the other. I really can say that.
Yeah. But
you're going to get whacked when you go out to Montana. You saw things here in the Dakotas that you've never seen before. Well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about this idea of emotional well-being and silence and quiet and all those things. I talk with a lot of pastors. Obviously, that's what I am. I talk to a lot of people though that are in different places in life. And right now, especially with the quarantine, those things, we're more separated than we've been for most of us. In a lot of ways, but we're still not in quiet. We're still not in stillness. What would you suggest to the person that's listening? Now, I know what I would suggest, and what I would suggest is getting on a plane and flying to Rapid City and then just driving out to the Badlands and parking your car and walking out among the rocks or riding through the Black Hills. That would be my suggestion. Now, that's my new therapy routine for anybody that wants to know. Drive to Rapid or fly to Rapid City. But that being said, for obviously people that just can't do that. What do you suggest for the average person that's listening, that goes, yeah, I don't have any stillness. In fact, right now, don't turn this off, but you don't have stillness right now. You're not in your own thoughts right now. You're in a conversation with Bishop Kemp and myself. So what suggestions do you make for people? How do they find that you and I were in the Charlotte region, I still am. How do you find that quiet there? What do you suggest for that emotional well-being?
Yeah, well, you've hit on a passion of mine that I have in the last few years have become very. This is in my own life. I haven't, thumped the pulpit and get on people's case about it, but so I've done a lot of study on this, and we've glorified being busy, and we've glorified multitasking and all that, but the science is against all that. We do not multitask well. And so I am aggressive in my own life in shutting down, letting my brain defrag. If the people that aren't familiar with the old, where all the new suites, they take care of that for you, but you'd have to defrag your hard drive.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you a few things, Patrick, that I do. I'm very intentional. Matter of fact, I have, you create a system for anything that matters. And so I have accountability questions that I ask myself every day. And I grade myself, whether I'm winning or losing. And so there's a couple things. But one, look for beauty. And you don't have to be in North Dakota to do that. Look for beauty. Beauty is what makes us humans. As someone once said that a man and a cat can both see a king, but only the man can see the king. It's just, and of course, and so a man and a cat can look at a flower, but only the man can see beauty. And so it can be man-made. I try to find natural beauty, and I've been doing this even before I came here, but every day, part of my grade is, did I take the time to stop and look for beauty? And that's a part of that finding silence and finding emotional health. Simple things like, protect yourself from your phone. Your phone is your adversary. It's a tool. And as long as you keep it a tool, but my phone doesn't ring till 9 o'clock in the morning, which is 10 o'clock back east. And, but I don't look at my phone first thing in the morning. I check emails. Emails are dangerous. I try to respond every day to personal emails, but they're dangerous. All these notifications, I turn all my notifications off. My computer, when I bring up my web browser, has no news on it. The science, there's a lot of science on this. And then being alone, I try to spend, I remember, you and I will appreciate this, everybody won't, but Raymond Culpepper is a well-known name in our little tribe, the Church of God.
Sure.
And he's been our general overseer, which is the equivalent of our Pope. Just a great man. And I've known Dr. Culpepper for many years. There's nothing close, but there is a bit of a family history there through my dad and his dad and all. I won't get into all that. So at a crucial time when I hit a ceiling, I have to go find somebody that has broken through that ceiling and get them to walk me through how they did it.
Right.
So this was even when Dr. Culpepper was general overseer, but I called him, made an appointment, and he said, I'll drink a cup of coffee with you. So I drove to Cleveland, went up there, and we were sitting there talking, and he said, David, he says, you know what I miss? He was in the throes of being a general overseer. He says, I miss being back when I was pastoring, and I had time. I'd make time every day to put the Bible in my lap, open Bible in my lap. Sometimes I'd read it, sometimes I wouldn't. But I miss looking out the window.
Wow.
And his eyes watered up. And Warren Buffett, who is one of the wealthiest men in the world.
Sure.
He he spends at least 5 hours a day just reading and looking out the window. I really am intentional about every day sitting down and doing nothing. I remember Loran Livingston talking about it. To get up in the morning, and the first thing he does is go sit in a dark room. He doesn't read his Bible or anything. He doesn't even pray, but just gets up and just waits. If the Lord wants to speak to him, lets his brain defrag. And so I would encourage you to look for beauty. I encourage you to be silent, tune out the news and the noise. You have to jump into all that, but you've got to carve out margin in your life where your soul can breathe, where you can just relax. I'm very, very passionate about that in my own life. You know, other people have to do what they got to do. They're attached to their phone every minute of the day, and I'm not going to fuss at them. I'm not going to scold them. But they really are damaging themselves. And more, you see people that really study the brain and study human nature. And I predict there will be a bit of a backlash on technology, that people are going to realize this is a double-edged sword, and we're going to have to handle all this technology a little more cautiously. I'm not against technology. I am thankful for it. But right now, unless God decrees otherwise, we're still human. We're not human/machines, and we have to take care of ourselves emotionally. So anyway, there you go.
It is interesting that some of the biggest names in tech limit their children's screen time.
Absolutely.
That's, you've got these executives that limit their own time. A lot of things are being developed now as far as like phones have app timers where you can say, hey, after I've spent so much time on this app, I'm going to cut it out. You know, it'll go gray. I can't access it, so on and so forth. But I think for a lot of people with this emotional health, I think a lot of what's happening is we're so caught up in the world of, I call it now anti-social media. I'm sure that's coined by someone else, but where we have these behaviors that are not typical human behaviors. I can say things online, especially if I'm anonymous,
yes,
that I would never say. But even if people are quicker to engage in anger. Mm-hmm. If they're connecting online, there's things I would that people will say to someone that they would never say if they're sitting in the same room. They would never have that emotional response, and it's not because they're a coward that they wouldn't say it in the same room. It's because when you're in the same room, you connect as humans, and in that human connection, you begin to have empathy for the individual. You try to connect in a real way. You try to communicate in a different way, and so we see a lot of that negativity turned up. And you talked about the influx of information, the distractions. You know, there's been studies that said one of the reasons that people have road rage is because biologically, when you're on the road, your body is in a heightened sense. The driver is in a heightened sense of danger. You're making decisions that,
sure.
On the East Coast, we're making decisions at 70 miles an hour. Out here, they're making decisions
at the speed of light.
Yeah, it's slightly under the sound threshold. And so when people are making these decisions in their vehicle, they're constantly in danger, constantly looking, this car could move and kill me. They're on another level, so when somebody cuts them off, it's it's an overreaction because they're at a heightened place. And I wonder how much that crosses over when we've got on social media and before we've done anything, we've seen 100 opinions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for thousands of years in human existence, you didn't get 100 opinions a day. You didn't get 100 opinions a week.
No.
And now, thousands of opinions. 25% of all traffic, it might be 20%, of all traffic on the internet is on Facebook. So that's nothing but opinions. I mean, sure, there's some pictures of somebody's cat, their kitchen, their whatever.
Sure.
But for just opinion after opinion after opinion after opinion, and a lot of them are things you don't agree with. And honestly, of course, now we can like what we want, follow what we want. We have these echo chambers, and so now we're inundated, and we're trying to make these. We're trying to have mental health while we're taking in just toxicity.
Sure. Well, Pastor, I'm going to leverage your podcast here on the chance of any of my friends and former parishioners and stuff that happen to hear this. I look at Facebook, excuse me, I look at Facebook once a day. If I have time, it's the last little snippet at the end of the day. I'm a big believer, too, in quitting at a certain time, and so if I don't respond to your to your comments or all the things, please don't hold it against me, because I just don't have the capacity. I care and I love people, but Facebook is way down on the food chain, and so don't hold it against me.
For all of Pastor Kemp's friends and
the
family,
few that I have,
and those that are commenting, or you're sending them, so you're going, I will come to his defense and say, not only does he not have the capacity in his day, but out here he may just not have the signal.
Well, that's true too. When I'm on the road, especially. Yes, it's easy to get weaned off the phone when you make a trip.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife and I were talking about, we haven't been on our phones. Well, we couldn't have been.
That's right.
For a lot of this. But that is, that idea of trying to navigate through these things. And, we always are very conversational on the podcast, which is why you guys keep listening, why it keeps growing, because it's what you like. That being said, I want to go a step further with the mental health thing. I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about that. There's other people that are doing that, doing it better. But in this world of camps and divisiveness, now I hear people say things, and I think there's a lot of rhetoric, but they say, I've never seen America as divided as it is now. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think for them it feels true in that moment. I can say in my lifetime, I don't remember a time where people seemed so resistant to having actual conversation, so resistant to the acceptance that people that don't agree with me may be decent people that just don't agree with me. Mm-hmm. Whether it's politically or, any ideology. Right now, politics is the big one. But if you don't agree with me, you are wicked, you are evil, you are ignorant, you are everything. And there was a point where, honestly, people would say, well, you just don't understand, or you're ignorant. Now we've gotten to the point where people on both sides basically say, or both is, here we go with, a dichotomy, but on whatever side you're on, people that don't agree with me are now evil. And
sure,
we've got believers that have different beliefs and different ideologies and different things. And obviously we want to get everyone to a biblical worldview, but there's a lot of people that disagree on what biblical worldview is. What do you see when you sit back and you look out? And I know you're responsible for we talked about the territory and so forth, but you have a deep responsibility to lead men and women. What do you tell us in this time of, or maybe am I seeing it wrong? Or is it really that divided? And what do you say to us in those times, navigating that?
Well, that is a part of my my job. I don't like heavy-handed leaders, so I try not to be heavy-handed. But there has been a few times I've made some quiet calls to some of my pastors and say, now look, I want you to take that off the Facebook. That because as a pastor, as a minister, you are a public figure. You don't have the luxury of being a private citizen. So I think, Pastor, that, and I know you like this, if people would read more history, like my wife and I listened to this tome on Ulysses S. Grant over our travels. And honestly, of course, obviously the Civil War, we're not that divided just yet. We did have one little city or county or something out in Seattle or whatever that wanted to secede from the government.
Six blocks. Yeah.
But I think we can manage that. But, obviously the country was divided. But what was interesting to me is, because his career, the author took us through several administrations, And, right now the Democrats and Republicans and Pelosi and Trump and all these people are, but honestly, it really was, I was shocked at how backstabbing and angry and virtually murderous, I said, well, good Lord, this sounds just like today.
Well, with one president, it went all the way to murder.
Well, that's true. And so I think if we'd read history, we'd realize that this is just human nature. It's regrettable, but it's just human nature. So, but I have a couple things on that, Patrick, that, I have a little saying: I will not make an opinion until I will not make a decision or form an opinion until I absolutely have to. And in the back of my mind is, I'll take care of that when I get to heaven. Mm. And the way my passion and philosophy is what C.S. Lewis called mere Christianity. And what he meant by that, there's a lot of things that can divide us. But the essence of Christianity, salvation through grace, we do not earn our salvation, the core value of Jesus Christ and Him crucified, resurrected, coming again. And so I don't have to form an opinion. I make my wife mad about it sometimes. She wants me to form an opinion on everything. What do you think? Well, I really don't have an opinion on that. I am not going to have an opinion on that. I am not, there's only one day every 4 years that I need to have an opinion on the president, and that's election day. And that's the only thing I can do about it. And so, and I don't have to have an opinion on the Speaker of the House. I'll never vote for the Speaker of the House unless it's the Speaker of the House happens to be my representative here in North Dakota. So there's not a thing. There's a lot of things they do need to make decisions on that really matters that they could make a difference about. And so I just don't go there.
So maybe we're drawn into it, that need. You said, I'm not going to form an opinion until I have to. And there's so many, we both have pastoral backgrounds, so many pastors or other people, but that feel like we've got to form an opinion. The world needs to know. My 612 followers need to know.
Yeah,
it's pretty narcissistic, though.
It really is. Well, as preachers, we are used to being a voice of authority, but you need to know what you need to be authoritative about. And I'll give you a great example. I did not realize how important this was when our little tribe in South Carolina. I know the Church of God. I've been there since I was a little boy, and so I knew the backdrop. So I knew a lot of the history. So I would form opinions. But when I came up here, I didn't know all the background, the backdrop, and so almost every opinion I formed was wrong.
Yeah.
And I realized the reason why I could make good decisions in South Carolina about situations and people was because I had a lot of data. I knew a lot of the background. But when you get really beyond your little neighborhood, you're not qualified to come up with a lot of stuff. And so here, I'm glad I've withheld judgment. I would, I'd have a kind of a general idea, and I don't have to make a decision right now. And as time began to evolve, I saw things more clearly, and I was so glad I didn't pop off or run off at the mouth and make a decision or form an opinion, because I would have been wrong.
Right. And then once you're wrong, then you have the obligation to defend that wrong position.
Oh, yeah. So, it's regrettable. I hate what's going on in our country, I'll be honest. But, I pray about it. But I'm definitely not going to use social media to, all we're doing is screaming at each other. Like, as you said, that dichotomy, we're just screaming at one another, and nobody's convincing anybody. I know this, and I don't enjoy getting off on political issues. And this is not political. This is a life or death issue. I want to take the time. This may be a little controversial here, but I would like to take the time, because I know people that who am I to judge? We'll find out when we get to heaven. But they appear to genuinely love the Lord, but they are pro-abortion. And I don't know how that can be, but I would like to take the time and find out how you can be a Christian and be pro-abortion instead of, as you say, they're just evil. Now, I'm definitely, I go on record, I am pro-life. But, instead of villainizing and making everybody evil, at least instead of it's much more important to learn why than to learn how. Mm. And why do they think that way? Now, they may be wrong, but I'm guessing they feel like they have a good reason.
And I think one of the things that is missing is, and here we go. You've made your controversial abortion statement, but I'll make my controversial theological statement, and that is, I don't believe that people are inherently good. I don't believe that.
No.
But I do believe that we miss the fact that most people, I believe, that are operating in what they think are good intentions.
Well, they have the image of God. I mean, you have people on one side, guns up here, everybody's got guns. Then you got some that do not, they're against guns. Well, I'm guessing that both sides, they have good, passionate reasons why. And instead of proverbially or metaphorically shooting at one another, screaming at one another, let's find out why.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing with where we are as a people, but maybe as Americans, and so that narrows things down. But I guess struggle unites people. Struggle brings people together, and maybe it's been, well, I don't know, man. Or this is a struggle, the pandemic, and I'm not sure that it's bringing anyone together. The last thing, I guess the big event of my lifetime was 9/11. Mm-hmm. And I remember, man, after 9/11, it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except you were an American.
Sure.
That's all that mattered. And I think maybe politically there was a time where a lot of our politicians, leaders, had come out of that World War II generation. Mm-hmm. They had been through a struggle. They'd been through something. At the end of the day, they were Americans working towards a goal. Whereas now, you are one person's wicked, one person's evil, and you raise a very good question. I know people, or a good point. I know people that are that believe in that they're pro-choice, but they seem to be people who, in a lot of ways, love God, and that, for me, it doesn't make sense. I can't reconcile the two.
Sure. In
my worldview. And I know you're the same way, but when I look, I would love to know or try to understand. And I've had those conversations, but you can talk about anything. I don't know. I do think, for example, politicians, some that are out for personal enrichment and so on and so forth, but I don't think the average person that says, hey, I'm going to run for city council has in their mind that one day they're going to be a senator and they're going to be trying to negotiate with a lobbyist to get themselves a $1 million home somewhere. I don't think that's where they begin.
Right.
And I think for us, it would be good for us to remember that. But if we narrow that on down, I'm not sure that it's just on the grand scale as much as it is when we have a disagreement with our neighbor, or when we have a disagreement in our church over, the anecdotal stories of the color of the carpet or where the piano is placed or whatever. We tend to be people who get into a camp and then fight to the death. Mm-hmm. We emotionally attach ourselves to an idea. And I guess for all of us, we would do better to have a little more nuance, a little more conversation. Hey, More Than a Conversation listeners, I hope that you are enjoying this conversation as much as I am, and I hope that you're getting something great out of it today. I'm just wanting to jump in here in the middle to take a moment and let you know a few ways that you can help out More Than a Conversation. First, wherever you're listening, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. That will definitely help, and that'll make sure that you get all the content. Also, if you have a way to rate, if your app allows you to give a 4-star, 5-star, whatever the rating is that's the top rating, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and drop a rating there. That's how the aggregators and the distributors rank podcasts, and the higher the ranking you give, the more ears will be able to hear these great conversations. Thanks again, and I'm hoping that today has been more than a conversation for you. Now let's get back to it. Anything else you want to throw in on that?
Well, I have another little axiom. What you see and hear is almost never, well, I really actually say what you see and hear is never the full story. So I think if people would just at least turn the page, look at the footnotes of life.
I do want to ask you about something else. You mentioned reading history, and that will take us into a topic that I want to talk to, because you are a person who has spoken in my life a lot about growing yourself and those systems for growing yourself and so on and so forth. I'd love to talk to you about that. You've mentored a lot of ministers. In fact, in South Carolina, when you were still there, even as you pastored a local church, you were involved in mentoring. But going backwards from that, right now I'm sitting in the regional offices of the Church of God for the North Central region, and I'm talking to the administrative bishop. But somewhere along the lines, there was a guy who was not the administrative bishop, and somewhere there's an origin story. That's one of our key components of More Than a Conversation is our Marvel equivalent to the origin story. So tell me a little bit about, even when I met you. When I met you, you were a pastor of one of the largest churches in all of our tribe, in the whole world, in the Church of God. And so I met you as this successful man who had it all together, and you were just born as a pastor. That was what your life, where your life began and ended, was as a pastor. So tell me a little bit about that. What's the origin story for David Kemp?
Well, there was this stork named Clyde.
I was born a pauper to a clock.
I'm a Cabbage Patch Kid. Oh, well, we talked a little bit about this last night. My dad came from a pretty rough background. They were hard living, hard swearing, hard drinking coal miners from West Virginia. So my dad was a little street urchin, hellion probably, but a little lady at the Church of God in North Fork, West Virginia, saw my dad and said, they called him Rosie. His name's Harry Roosevelt, and they called him Rosie. Rosie, if you'll go to church with me tomorrow, I'll buy you an ice cream. Well, my dad didn't get ice cream, and so long story short, he went, and she did it for several weeks in a row. And one Sunday he got saved, and that changed the course of that family. That changed their life. As I said last night, most Sunday nights, ice cream is a sacrament in our family, and so I eat ice cream at least once a week on Sunday night because I'm here because of ice cream.
Is there any way you think we can get that on the General Assembly agenda
to add ice cream
as a sacrament?
Put it right under foot washing. Foot washing's a little controversial in a lot of. We need to fight over that. No, they're all wrong and evil if they don't have. But anyway,
hey, I think we should. I think you're wrong and evil if you don't believe in ice cream.
Absolutely, ice cream will be in heaven. So you run the clock up and up to me. Anyway, so I grew up in the church all my life, and Patrick, I hate to talk about myself, my story. What do you want to know? It's I was a typical kid. I went off to school and went off to Lee, our denominational, I call it college. That shows you how far back it was. It's a university now. And
did you know you were going into ministry when you went to Lee?
Now that I knew, here's the way I put it. I knew if I served the Lord, I would have to be a preacher. But I struggled with that, and I even struggled with whether or not there's even a God. I am Thomas is my patron saint. I have to read apologetics. I don't read apologetics this sounds terrible, especially the administrative bishop, but I don't read apologetics to learn how to convert the atheist. I read apologetics to stay saved. And sometimes maybe I think too much. But so, I had to struggle through all that, and I've got some great stories of how God was faithful. And so, I started out as a youth pastor, got fired at my first position, got fired, newlywed, and got fired, and that opened up the door to get hired as youth pastor at Fort Mill, which I never dreamed that years later, because of that connection, I would be chosen as the pastor. Or that was a part of the reason why the people they knew me. And so God has been gracious and faithful. If it helps a young pastor, I remember my first church, we stayed in a little trailer, and they had a little guest room, which is about as big as a closet, had bunk beds in it. And I'd be so overwhelmed with my little handful of people. I'd be so overwhelmed with life. I would go in there and get on that bottom bunk and put a blanket over the top bunk where it would be enclosed in dark. And I'd lay there about all day. I'd be paralyzed. I'd be so discouraged and depressed. And I just dug through. Nobody told me. Thank God I had a dad that was in the ministry. That's why I'm so passionate about mentoring. If it wasn't for him, and most men don't have that luxury, sure, or women, and so nobody was, really being intentional about helping me. And so that's kind of where my passion. I had to grow. I had to figure it out myself. And most of the stuff you learn in school, they teach you how to learn. They don't. Most of the stuff I learned in school is obsolete now.
Sure.
And so, I'm very passionate about that. And then I remember, move the clock up. These are just a couple, really mountain peak kind of moments. So there's a lot of backstory in all this. But I was taking my son to school one morning. I had a little Pinto. All they had was an AM radio. This is back when talk radio was just getting out there. Rush Limbaugh was just becoming rock stardom status, and all that stuff. And so my son loved to listen to talk radio on the way to school every morning. And so we was listening to this guy, and he said, if you don't have a plan for your life, somebody does, and you won't like it. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't have a plan for my life. And so that day, I began to really think about that. I need to start being more intentional about my life. That was a defining moment for me. And then I had this guy, people think you got to be a theologian or kind of a white collar guy to be a thinker. But I had this construction worker that got saved. He was strung out on drugs, and he came into church one night, it was a Sunday night, got saved, and started reading like a rabid mad scientist or something. And he was reading systematic theology and all this stuff. And so for the rest of my tenure there, his name's Anthony Snipes. If Anthony ever hears this, I am where I'm at today because of people like him. And I stayed about a feather's distance, about a half an inch of a half an inch of a half an inch ahead of him for the rest of my tenure there, because he'd have all these profound questions. I had to start growing.
Yeah.
And then another defining moment, early into my tenure at Fort Mill, and I was there 20 years, so this early in there, I had hired one of the men, Larry Nivens. A lot of the guys will know Larry. And I hired him because it's the Billy Graham principle. Billy Graham, of course, Billy Graham is not here now. He's got his reward. But back in the day, I called it the Billy Graham principle. If he walked into my office and said, Pastor, the Lord has told me I need to come work for you. Well, I'm not going to tell Billy Graham, well, I don't have money in the budget, or I don't have a place for you. You're going to make a place for Billy Graham.
Right.
Well, Nivens was kind of like that. He was a sharp guy, and so I hired him as my executive pastor. I didn't have a clue what an executive pastor did, so I brought in Floyd Carey, who was the executive pastor for Raymond Culpepper, by the way. And so I brought him in for a weekend just to hang out with Larry. And I had to go somewhere. I was flying out of town for some reason. I don't remember why. So I took him out to lunch, and I said, Brother Kerry, I don't have but just a minute. I got to make my flight. If you could tell me one thing, what would it be? And I'll never forget, he tapped the napkin, and he kind of traced it out. He said, I'll give you 2 words. Be intentional. I don't know, but that just, they say when the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
That hit me like a ton of bricks. Have a plan for your life and then be intentional. And I have spent the rest of my life trying to be intentional. Do whatever I do it on purpose. So that's that whole thing about self-growth, and there's a lot more to it than that, but that's kind of the highlight.
And I think there's a lot of people who, when they start hearing that, and people who are listening right now, that they go, okay, well, that's cool for pastors, that's cool for business leaders, that's cool for whoever, this idea of self-growth, having a plan for your life and being intentional. But I think it works for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, like that Anthony Snipes I was telling you, construction worker, but he was a brilliant guy. You can work in the mill, you can drive a tractor for a living, dig ditches. You can still be a great mind and do something with your life.
Absolutely. And also, if you're listening to this podcast, you're sitting in your office. You are not a person who says, I've got aspirations of being the president of my company, or maybe you go, my education background training is prohibitive to me doing that. But what is it that you want to do? What is it that you look out and you go, that is my goal, that is what I'm doing, or that is where I want to get to. And when you determine where it is you want to get to, you have that plan, then you've got to start taking those intentional actions to make that plan happen. So when you look at where do I want my kids, and for a lot of you that are listening, you probably have children. And so you look at, where do I want my kids to be? What's my plan for when I retire? Whatever it is. This podcast is coming out after a podcast where you just heard me talking with David Kopenhofer about financial planning for your life. Whether it's your finances or your career or whatever, a question I like to ask myself every day is, what did I do today to get me towards my goals? Mm-hmm. Today. Not what did I think about that I can do tomorrow, not what did I do today to get me there. Because the only way you're going to get where you want to go is to start to have that plan. And then, we used to have a saying when I was in secular work, which was, have a plan, work your plan. Have a plan, work your plan. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we have a plan, or we read a book, or we listen to a podcast, and we go, man, that bishop in the NCR, he was really sharp, and I like that idea of being intentional. Great, wonderful. So what are you going to do today? Like, what's today's action? Absolutely. What's today's plan? What book are you going to read? What call are you going to make? What financial, again from last week, what person are you going to talk to about insurances? When are you going to find out what your company matches with your 401k? What are you going to do today to get you there? What decision are you going to make with your kid? Oh, I want my kid to get in such and such a school. Great. So what application are you filling out? What book are you reading to your child? What preschool have you chosen? All those things are things that you can do. What is it today? Whatever's going on in your life, whatever the goal is, I want to have a great landscape yard. Great. Which bush are you planting today? Whatever it is. It's so important for you to get a hold of that and understand when we're having these conversations and you're listening to more than a conversation, the goal of it is for it to be more than a conversation, for you to put it into practice, and for it not to be, well, these are just two guys that are operating in a world that I'm not operating in. This is for everyone from the mechanic to the farmer to the office worker to the school teacher to the whatever it is you do. When you're listening to this, what can you put into action? Speaking of actions, we've talked about the need to have a plan. If a person says, I want to grow, I want to go somewhere, I want to, whatever it is, can you give us 2 or 3 things that you go, this is the Bishop Kemp plan? I'm just kidding. But this is the plan for self-growth. What are some things a person can do?
Well, he who reads leads. And so I would encourage people to, honestly, to average reading a book a week. And don't whine and fuss and cry at me, I don't have time, if you watch TV or if you look at Facebook, or I don't want to hear it. And so and really, there's nothing wrong with listening to books, but you need to read them, because you're multitasking when you're listening to a book. Almost always, you're walking, driving. But if I could just tell you to do one thing, read, and then read intentionally. I don't just read what I'm interested in. I make myself. I have categories, and I could show that to you, but I read systematically and I read intentionally, and then travel. Make yourself. That's why we went to the state parks. We have rambling vacations, and we go find places of interest. Go on missions trips. Take a vacation. Don't take a vacation to the same spot every year. Go somewhere different. Get out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
All that makes you grow. Get involved in your community and civic and church. All that helps you to grow.
Absolutely.
Now, you said something earlier. What did I do today to help me reach my goals? So you're telling me that you've got goals.
Sure.
That, and people don't need, they don't need to overlook that fact. And so I think to grow, what is it you're growing? And so have goals that you're being intentional. I'm working. This is what I'm looking for. I'm wanting to become. Like if I talked to I have to, Sandra kicked me under the table because I kick into my mentoring mode. And so I was talking to a waitress a while back, and I always strike up a conversation with the waiter or waitress. These kids, I want to help them. I don't know why. And so, long story short, Israel came up. Oh, I want to go to Israel. I want to go to Israel someday. Oh, you do? I said, yeah. I said, well, long story short, she's never going to Israel because she has no plan, no goal. So I walked her through, how much she'd have to save just every day, just a couple of dollars a day. And in a certain amount of time, she could go to Israel. And that was like news to her.
Yeah.
And now whether she'll do it or not, but if you don't have a plan, you got a goal, and then you get a plan, then you work the plan. That's that self-growth, that being intentional.
It is such a simple thing.
You break it down.
The idea, yeah.
You change your yard one bush at a time.
Yeah, $2 a day, you go to Israel.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And now, you may not go next year.
Right.
But at $2 a day, there's a tipping point where you have enough money to take a world-class trip to Israel.
Wow. Absolutely. And that all goes back to that concept of goals, having the plan, working the plan, the discipline to stay with the plan, and understanding what it is that you want to grow. Those are all incredibly great points. We're going to wrap up. You've got an entire region to run, and I've got a lot of miles to drive.
Yeah,
today.
Sure.
So I do want to ask this. If you have any closing comments, advice, I'm not even going to ask you to put on your bishop's hat. Just as a man who has walked this journey out, we are at a place right now that is as confusing as it's ever been. People that are listening to this are dealing with questions and concerns. In our region of the country, schools are starting to open back up. People have questions about that. People have fear. There's so many things happening out there. What would you say to believers? I know what you would say to non-believers, the primary thing you would say, but what would you close with? You, as the bishop, you have to deal with other things. So we're going to give you the 6-minute pulpit now.
Okay.
Be a pastor, I guess. Tell us, what is it that you're saying to? What would you say? What do you feel like God's trying to show us, trying to tell us? What do we need to be hearing, and what mindset do we need to be operating in right now?
Well, Pastor, that is a loaded question. I mean, I could go in any different direction. I'm going to restrain myself from getting all preachery here. I think truly, making Jesus Christ the paramount passion, priority, and pursuit of your life would be, if I could only say one thing, but that's my Christian worldview. And I know everybody that's going to listen to this podcast, that may not be their thing, and we'll talk about that on another day. But so let me just focus in on this one thing. Let me just lay it on the table. You're going to die. Every one of us are going to die. So get over it. We're going to die. There's no way around it. And what I see right now is people are living to not die. And now I'm not telling you to be reckless. Using maybe more of a male metaphor here. Having a good defense is a part of a winning team, but playing defensively is a surefire way of losing. And I see a lot of people, our nation, churches, pastors, individuals, they're living right now to not die. You're going to die. Now, don't be reckless, don't be stupid, but live your life to the fullest. Live fearlessly. Go for it. Leverage your life, one of my favorite words, but we all, you're not 7 foot tall, but a little short man, if he gets the right leverage, he can reach the mountain too. It don't matter your limitations. Leverage what you've got to live life to the fullest. Don't be reckless, but be fearless. And so, for what it's worth, get out there and get at it. Live your life. And, I have I have 29 diagnostic questions I ask myself every month. And the one today was, what am I doing right now that will matter when I die? And, do something that's going to matter, that you'll feel good about. And a lot of stuff, going back to our world, if the Calvinists are right or the Arminians are right, I don't know, really. We'll figure that out when we get to heaven. But the Calvinists and the Arminians both love the Lord Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that gets back to that mere Christianity. A lot of stuff's just above my pay grade, but I'm going to leverage what I can do and get out there and live life to the fullest. Have fun. Make sure you do something every day. I tell my pastors this. Make sure you laugh every day. Find beauty every day.
Amen. Amen. Bishop Kemp, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, with the pre-published warning that likes, comments, shares, he may not respond.
I love you.
Tell us where folks that want to, I know you write, you do some blogging. Tell us where people can follow you, website, social media. What platforms are you on, and how can people follow you?
You can probably the best way to follow me, I do try to throw a little short little word out there most days, pastorkemp.com. That's my blog. You can follow me on Twitter. I think it's at David L. Kemp. Send me a Facebook request, and I'll probably accept, So there you go.
All right. Well, thanks again, Bishop. Thank you so much for joining us,
man. God bless you for what you're doing. Well, you're a great leader yourself, Pastor.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. We enjoyed the conversation. For everybody listening, we hope that today has been more than a conversation for you. Thanks again for being part of More Than a Conversation today. If you'd like more content like this, check out my blog at www.pastorconley.com. That's PastorConley.com. Again, that's PastorConley.com. I'd also love to see you join us in worship at Garden Sanctuary. If you're ever in Rock Hill, South Carolina, or the greater Charlotte area, we'd love to have you stop by and worship with us. Check us out at www.gardensanctuary.org. That's gardensanctuary.org. Until next time, I hope this has been more than a conversation.